Welcome to Into the Writer's Cave. I'm your host, Patricia Sargent. On this episode, we're going into the writer's cave with critically acclaimed mystery author and retired police detective, David Swinson. David, thank you so much for inviting us into your story world.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Oh, the honor is mine. Let's just chat. Could you tell me, what was the first book you read that made you want to become a published author?
Honestly, that's a very easy question. It goes back to when I was 16 years old, and it was To Kill a Mockingbird. Harper Lee, yeah. And I've actually read that when I need inspiration. I've read it more than a dozen times. I've done, library speaking things about that book. It's my go-to book for, like I said, inspiration, and because it encompasses. It's one of the books that I didn't know when I was 16, but later when all these genres. I mean, I think Amazon started separating everything in genres, To Kill a Mockingbird is a mystery, it's suspense, it's drama, it's court drama, it's literary, it's young adult, it's every genre there is, and it's beautiful. It's my go-to book.
Super. Have you ever seen any of the performances or the movie?
The movies several times, and I do want to see with I think Jeff Goldblum. I do want to do
Daniels.
Jeff Daniels, Goldblum. I do want to see the New York Broadway. Definitely.
Well, I hope you're able to. That is really impressive.
Yeah.
And that's a very good book. A good choice, David.
No, thank you.
How many books have you published?
It's actually not that hard of a question, but for some reason I'm freezing.
That happens
5.
to me too. 5.
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
Still.
No. Detail Man 4. Yeah, 5. That's all. It's like I pause and think, 30 books, no, 5 books.
That happens to me too. And actually, it happens to several of the authors I've interviewed. Yeah. I asked that question. It's yeah. The 5, do you have one series?
Yeah, no, one series, which is the Frank Morris series, which is only a trilogy. It started as a trilogy. I got a 3-book deal with Little Brown and Company to do a series that only became a trilogy in my mind, and it ended with book 3.
Oh, I see. So they're all mysteries?
Yeah. The imprint of Little Brown, Mulholland, specialize in suspense, mystery, crime fiction. So I have to have that element. Yeah, not so much mystery, but suspense or thriller, or crime fiction. Super.
So this may seem like a stupid question, but indulge me. What drew you to the mystery genre?
That started when I was very young. There were 2 things I've always wanted in life, and I wanted to get in law enforcement early on before college, and I wanted to be a writer, but I ended up taking different paths in life, and I didn't end up getting published until my early 50s. But crime fiction and the characters involved with crime fiction and detectives and all that just really inspired me, and that's actually what led me to leave what I was doing in California, which was pretty substantial, and to become a DC police officer and then detective, was to learn more about about what detectives do. But then it ended up becoming a lifelong thing. I ended up staying a lot longer than I thought I would on the DC Police Department. Yeah.
So you left Los Angeles to become a police officer in DC.
Hmm.
Why did you not want to become a police officer in Los Angeles?
Um, I actually did apply, and they didn't think I had the. I started my degree was in film at Cal State Long Beach. Yeah, and
Wow.
after that I got into promoting punk rock. I had two clubs in Long Beach, California, where every alternative punk rock band, and mainstream band, everyone from Red Hot Chili Peppers to BB King to
Wow.
and he's not punk rock, but um, I promoted a lot of concerts. And then I got into MTV music videos. And then I got into a film for New Line Cinema. And then when I decided I wanted to get into law enforcement, which was a very severe segue, not even a segue, it was a severe cut. Um, the LAPD, they just didn't think I was LAPD material because of my background.
Oh,
And I was DC was always home base between countries because my dad was foreign service. So I grew up in DC. I went to Duke Ellington School of the Arts, back then called Western School of the Arts. Um, and I grew up and went to high school in DC, and it was always home base. And so then I applied to DC and was accepted,
super.
despite my film degree and the people I knew in punk rock.
Looking back on it, actually, at the time, I would have thought that was a very silly decision by the.
No, a lot of friends said, "What are you doing?" But it was the right decision.
Fantastic. So you were so determined to become a police detective that you left LA and
Hmm.
all of that behind.
Hmm.
You mentioned that you stayed a lot longer than you thought you would.
Yeah,
What was it that made you stay?
I actually uh, I wanted to become a better writer, and but it got into my blood, and actually, you know, um, police work and helping and being a part of the city, and what DC police are incredible. It's a great department, and it just stuck with me, and I ended up becoming a detective in a short period of time, and ended up in major crimes, and ended up doing what I really, really love, and um, was, and then all of a sudden, time had passed, that quickly, and,
That's wonderful.
yeah.
I'm
But I
so
was always writing on the department. We were allowed to do that, so, but unless it was something, based on actual cases, and we weren't allowed to do that. But I wrote fiction. I started a detailed man, while on the department, and completed it, when I retired. I ended up retiring early,
I'm so
but
glad you had such a great experience. That's
oh, it was an
wonderful.
incredible experience. Being a detective changed my life.
So you mentioned that you were inspired by To Kill a Mockingbird.
Hmm.
What other authors inspired you?
Um, I'm being inspired now by A Thousand Crimes of Ming Su by Tom Lin, which is up for the Carnegie Award. My editor actually recommended that book, and it's a new release this year, and it is so atmospheric and beautifully written, and it's a Western crime fiction novel with a Chinese protagonist. Uh, and it is so beautiful, and it's like changing everything I'm thinking about, the genre.
Oh,
But before that, I was inspired by a lot of. I grew up around the world, and my dad, who's still alive, when he left his books behind for me, and a lot of them were like Graham Greene and Maj Showal Perwahlu, which were some Swedish writers, a husband-wife team in Stockholm, and they did a 10-book series based in Stockholm that took place in an actual 10-year period in the 70s when all that turmoil was going on. And Stockholm actually became just as much a character as Martin Beck. And that really actually inspired me to, like, for Washington, D.C., like how you can make a city a character, you know? And, I go back to some of the Marshall Perwachu books several times, like I do to Kill a Mockingbird. So I was very inspired by them. And obviously Joseph Wambaugh, and the early stuff, Choir Boys and Onion Fields and things like that.
Fantastic. Those sound like great books.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're really into the mysteries. I can tell by the authors who inspire you.
Well, I read, what I really read is, Tom Lynn is it's a very literary book, but in the crime fiction genre. But I love like Marilyn Robinson, Gilead Home and all that. So Donna Tartt, Jonathan Lethem, Motherless, Brooklyn, I mean, those are the books that really, inspire me. I don't read a lot of mysteries really, unless they're like, like old and Friends. I read, a lot of my friends' stuff.
Super. Now, let's pause here. So for our readers, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and to post a comment to this video. Then come back for the rest of our interview with the critically acclaimed mystery author, David Swinson. Until then, happy reading.